Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
Thank you for all the views in the last episode. And personally, that was my favorite episode that we've done so far, mainly because it was, centered around our two favorite teams. So we had some real personal commentary to provide. But to start off for this week's episode or Monday's episode, we're gonna do some game recaps first. So the three games that we're going to recap are the Nuggets Sixers game, Knicks Nets, and Lakers Celtics.
So I'll start off.
Yeah.
This was part of Rivals Week. So Nuggets Sixers. This was obviously a pretty interesting game with a lot of storylines. Of course, you had Nikola Jokic, reigning back-to-back MVP winner, going against Joel Embiid. The runner-up. And also it's just kind of an interesting game just because two contrasting styles, two very different teams. But in the first half, the Nuggets looked like the more dominant team. They were up about 15 or so at halftime. Embiid was still playing really well, but Jokic was doing a good job finding his teammates, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. But then in the second half, the Sixers made some adjustments. They put PJ Tucker on Jokic, and they kind of put Embiid sort of in like the center area defensively, and it helped, and it worked out for the Sixers, and they ended up winning 126-119 behind 47 points from Joel Embiid. Jokic had a solid game, around 22, 5-ish points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, something like that. But, this game, you could kind of tell Joel Embiid was really trying to make a statement. Obviously he was left off the All-Star starter lineup. We apologize. We didn't have him in the starting lineup in the All-Star game either, but it was really hard to decide between all those guys because all those guys are really good. And at the time, I just felt like those three guys deserved the starting spot, but he really played really great in this game. Phillies won 7 straight. They're second in the East. They're starting to look really, really good. I still have a lot of questions about them come playoff time, just from a game and schematic standpoint between Harden and Embiid, but so far they've been really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting game. Like you said, I think Joel Embiid really took it personally that he wasn't a starter. And, he's technically still in the MVP race, and the narrative has been Jokic over Embiid for MVP. But, yeah, like you said, he had a dominant performance, 47, 18, and 5, which is ridiculous. And then Harden put up, easy double-double. Basically, his average is 17 and 13. And like, I don't know. I feel like with the Sixers, it's more so just Embiid puts them on his back.
Right.
And but with the Nuggets, it's more team basketball. But they just didn't have a defensive answer for Embiid at all in this game. But it was a good one.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing because, I think Philly, for a lot of NBA fans, is kind of one of those teams where a lot of people don't really like their style of play because, like you mentioned early in an earlier podcast, the free throws and, the foul baiting and going to the line. But, there are many games where it really does work. And I really like Denver's style of play too, up and down. Jokic being able to throw outlet passes, to guys like Aaron Gordon. And it seems like, his style of play kind of has turned everyone else into really good passers. I mean, you see guys like Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray throwing passes to each other. It's really fun to watch. And I really enjoyed this game as part of the Rivals Week.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical. I'm with you on the skepticism of Philly come playoffs, mainly. And it's not even because of Embiid and Harden. It's really because of Doc Rivers.
Right. I agree with that too.
His coaching history is kind of shaky. Especially his run with the Clippers. Not a fan of that at all. And even his early years with Philly, just bad. I'm not gonna say bad coaching, but it just seems like he just kind of brain farts in certain situations, and then you're like, why is he running this? Why is he doing this? But and another thing is the Sixers shot really well from 3 that game too. They shot 51%, and the Nuggets shot 41. So.
Exactly. And 3-point shooting can really flip these games because, Denver was making everything in the first half. And then in the second half, all of a sudden, Philly was making everything. But
yeah,
I do kind of agree with the Doc Rivers thing because I remember, when he was first in Philly, with Simmons and Embiid, and they had in the playoffs against the Hawks, they had those, games where they had like huge leads at halftime, and then all of a sudden they come out of the game with a loss, and
Makes
that
no
completely
sense.
changed the series because if they had won those games, they would have gone to the conference finals to face Milwaukee, and
Yep.
maybe, I don't know if they beat Milwaukee, but certainly the way that it ended against the Hawks, you could just tell everything just fell apart for Philly. But
Yeah.
shout out to them, shout out to Embiid. He had a great game.
Yeah,
Um,
he
making a
definitely
statement.
deserves that. Not gonna lie, we might have to go back and put him in the All-Star starters. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's too late for that, but yes.
Yeah.
So on to the next game from yesterday or from Sunday. Knicks Nets. 122-115. This game was kind of interesting in that the Nets controlled most of the game for the most part. I mean, the Knicks would sometimes kind of get back in it, but it kind of just felt like overall the Nets were going to win the game. Then, of course, you had Kyrie in the fourth quarter, doing his thing, seeming like he was hitting every shot.
Yeah.
He's done a really good job of keeping Brooklyn steady, without Durant. We talked about, initially when Durant first got hurt, this was what Kyrie was going to have to do.
Yeah.
And so far he's been doing it.
Yeah. He looks really good. I understand why he's an all-star starter. I think he was going to be in there regardless, but he put up 32, 6 and 9, which is insane. But as for the Nets in general, like I'm looking at the box score, it's pretty well rounded. And I know last episode we talked about them potentially moving their vets like Seth Curry,
Right.
but and Joe Harris, which are pretty valuable pieces for this
Mhm.
team. But I don't think now after seeing this game, I don't think they should move him.
Right. Yeah, and I
Mainly,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, and then you can also kind of have to factor in, Ben Simmons, who just doesn't look the same. He didn't
yeah,
play last night, and I know he kind of had the issue against Detroit where, he was hurt and came out, and you heard the coach talking about it. It just feels like a really weird situation. I know that, I'm sure that they're probably not happy with the fact that the Ben Simmons that they're getting isn't the one that they thought they were trading for, but I
yeah,
do kind of wonder. I don't think he'll be traded because I don't personally think he has a lot of value right now, but
right,
I do kind of wonder. That's my only concern with Brooklyn come playoff time is how is it going to work with Ben Simmons? Because
yeah,
that there's going to be times where he's going to have a shot around the basket and he's going to pass it up, and that's going to kill you late in the playoff game.
yep.
You can't have a guy that's not really looking to shoot, especially late in games when you need those type of possessions.
And like with Brooklyn, you need guys that are going to take the pressure off of Kyrie and Durant. And
Exactly.
I don't think Simmons really takes the pressure off of those guys in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's more of a two-way playmaker, like
Yeah. I mean, Doris Burke, I think in one of the last games that the Nets play, I think it was the one where they played against Philly. She kind of is sort of was saying that he seemed like a role player now and that it's kind of just hard to watch at times.
yeah,
I don't know. Cause like I said, I do like how Brooklyn has played so far. I just feel like
damn,
come playoff time, I got some real questions about Simmons just from a, is he ready to go standpoint? Cause
yeah,
there's times where it just looks really rough.
yeah. It looks like he doesn't fit into their scheme the whole
Right.
like sometimes. But as for the Knicks, they had a pretty well-rounded box score too.
Yeah.
Um, Randall had 19 and 10.
Mhm.
RJ had 24, Brunson 26, quickly
Yeah.
16. They
Yeah.
look good. Like I said, or like we both said, they surprised us
Yeah.
thus far this season.
Randall's another guy where I think I had left him off my all stars list
Same.
from the reserves, but I think he's a guy that has a really good chance of getting in because he's had a really good season and a much needed
Yeah.
bounce back season because he was had like a all star season, all NBA season 2 years ago, and then
Hmm.
last season he took a major step back, but he's
Yeah.
bounced back in a big way, and I know Jalen Brunson has also kind of helped with that, taking some pressure off him.
Yeah.
RJ Barrett looks good, but it still does feel like it really does seem like they should have gone after Donovan Mitchell because just watching them, I know they've had a solid season, better than expected, and they've been fine. But at the same time, you just feel like if they had had one of those type of guys like a Mitchell or somebody of that caliber, they'd be as good as some of the other teams, maybe a
For
tier
sure.
below.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, and then finally moving on to the last game of the big trio, Lakers Celtics. This one was a really entertaining back and forth game. LeBron had 41, 99, Jaylen Brown at 37. Um, and then, of course, as we got later into the game, it got really controversial where, towards the end of the game, LeBron drives to the basket. The shot misses. And then in the replay, you can see that he got fouled. It was a no call. Of course, he was very, very frustrated, by the lack of the no call. And they go into overtime and they lose. And it is kind of a weird situation. Usually I don't, like to say a whole lot about the officiating because I know and understand that at times it is difficult. But it does feel kind of weird that, like, I feel like at the end of games, you should be able to review the calls, just to see, like, if there's a foul, because I know, like, in a
Yeah.
playoff environment, that would be, you know, pretty upsetting to pretty much anybody, if their
Hmm.
team gets eliminated because of a situation like that. Also maybe getting your challenge back, but if you win it, because
Yeah.
I also feel like, that's another situation. But overall, as a Laker fan, it was pretty frustrating, but I will say it was an entertaining game up until the end.
Yeah. And in regards to the whole replay thing and the fouls, I know the NFL, they expedite all of their like scoring reviews or close calls to New York, which is like the center of all their replays and stuff like that. I don't know if the
Right.
NBA does that, but you
Caucus.
know, huh?
It's a caucus.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think they need to work on their expedition
Yeah.
process because that was a blatant call.
Yeah,
And
and
I
it
mean,
was
if the
actually
whole Lakers bench is frantically, screaming for a foul, and Pat Bev is bringing a camera onto the court, I mean, there's no question it's a foul, but
yeah.
it is what it is. And Jaylen Brown, he went in and put the game away pretty much in
Yeah.
overtime. I didn't
Yeah.
see the whole game; I just saw the overtime,
Right.
and I saw, and I saw Russ go up with a couple of shots, and
Mhm.
they look like fouls to me too. But that could just be me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just another situation where it just, there's just a lot of stretches where it just really hurts to have him out there. And I don't want to harp on him too much because, I understand he's taken a lot of beatings, but just overall, it's just another one of those situations where it's really up and down because, like, he had some stretches where he did make some good plays, getting some offensive rebounds, similar to Patrick Beverley getting a putback dunk late in the game, the first dunk he had in like 3 years.
Yeah,
Um, but then at the same time, he'll also have a lot of possessions where they're kind of wasted possessions where it's either turnovers or, they're leaving him open for jump shots when he's, not a particularly good jump shooter, to put it kindly.
hmm,
Um, I don't know. It just sometimes just gets kind of irritating to watch those type of possessions. But, overall, it was kind of, I didn't really expect the Lakers to win that game. I was honestly pretty surprised that they were in it for as long as
yeah.
they were. But, you know,
I don't mean to
it,
put you. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
oh yeah, but it was also really funny because immediately after the game, like, it probably wasn't even more than like 5 minutes, the NBA, in their pool report said, like, they asked the refs, like, how come you didn't call the foul? And they were like, well, we didn't see it. And it was just like, wow, that was kind of funny because it was right after the game,
Yeah,
and then they contacted them with, and was like, yeah, we messed that up. And they even sent
yeah,
out an apology.
yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, which again, I mean, thanks.
um,
Appreciate it. But
yeah. But the question I was going to ask you was, do you think after watching this game, do you think the Lakers could contend? Because they just went up against Boston and almost won. So, do you think there's a glimmer of hope for Laker fans out there?
my issue is that as long as Westbrook is on the roster, I don't think they can be a legitimate contender because, with him making $47 million, being the highest paid player on the roster, that's salary that should kind of be doled out to, some other support players, which is, kind of why I thought earlier in the season or before the season started when they were going to trade for Turner and Hield, I was kind of hoping that they would do it.
Yeah,
We'll get to Turner in a minute, but uh I don't know. As currently constructed, I don't think so. I think that they need more shooting. You can't have a guy like Westbrook, who's not a great outside shooter, taking, as many jump shots as he took. Even Dennis Schroeder, can get kind of hot and cold, but he's not
yeah,
like a super comfortable 3-point shooter either. You need more size because, again, even with Rui, even, after trading for Rui Hachimura, they still rolled out 3 guard lineups.
yeah,
Which, again, if you're gonna ask 3 guys that are, you know, 6'3" and under to try to guard Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, good luck.
Yeah.
Because those guys are, long, really talented athletes.
One more question. Sorry to, barrage you with these,
Right.
but okay, I have two. So, first of all, do you want Westbrook gone by the trade deadline?
So my thought process has always been I am more than comfortable trading both picks if it's a scenario where you can get back guys that can help you not just this season, but also like, for the next season or so. And also if it helps make them a contender. So like I'm not in the position of I'm not giving up the picks. I think if there's a good deal out there, you do it. It's just we haven't really gotten a lot of rumors in the sense of we don't know who's being traded. I mean, we've
Right.
heard names back and forth, but there really hasn't been a lot of smoke to a lot of these rumors. But personally, if it were me, I would do it because as long as you have LeBron and AD, I think you should try to contend. I
Yeah.
don't think it really makes sense to kind of just be okay with being not even good enough to be a play-in team. But in fairness, with the way the Western Conference is, it's not like they're 20 games back. They're only a few
Right.
games back of even the 4 spot. So
Yeah.
I think if you can get a deal done at the deadline involving Russ, go do it. I mean, I do think you lose something in terms of some of the playmaking, but it's like you have other guards.
Yeah.
So, and you have LeBron, who's a better playmaker than Westbrook. So I just think if you can get a good deal done, I would do it.
For sure.
But, if not, I'm going to be kind of disappointed.
This might be a dumb question, but do you think they will do it? Like, so in the
Mm,
next couple of weeks, do you think we're going to be seeing Westbrook, a
no,
Bleacher Report Westbrook notification?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think I think like a Patrick Beverly, Lonnie Walker, I think those guys might be more likely to be dealt just because I
Right.
feel like it seems like most teams, if you're gonna trade Westbrook, they want both first round picks. And I mean,
That's
that
rough.
might be okay depending on the deal, but if it's like a deal where it's like, Doug McDermott and Josh Richardson, I wouldn't give up 2 first round picks for that. I
Yeah.
just don't think that's good enough. So I personally don't think so. But in fairness, a lot of the trades that the Lakers do kind of come out of nowhere because, we talked about Rui Hachimura potentially going somewhere. We didn't even mention the Lakers because we didn't think he had any chance of going there. So
Yeah.
you
That
never
caught
know
me
with
off
these type
guard.
of so you never know with these type of front office deals. So something could come right at the last minute. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not really expecting a whole lot.
Right.
Um, So pretty much to kind of wrap it up, this was Rivals Week. These matchups. I think overall it was kind of interesting. Some of the matchups I thought were really cool. I thought ending it kind of like essentially like with Lakers Celtics, which is like the biggest NBA
Yeah.
rivalry. I thought was pretty cool. But then there were other matchups where I thought like some of the rivalries were kind of a stretch. Like Raptors Warriors, I don't really consider that a rivalry. I
No,
know that
not
they
at all.
played in the finals, but they don't really have any other history other than that. And like for Toronto, most of the guys that were on that Raptors team aren't even there anymore. It's
Yeah.
like it's like Siakam, Van Vliet, OG Anunoby, who didn't even play in the finals. So I mean, maybe there's somebody else I'm forgetting, but like something like that, something like Mavs Suns. I mean, again, they played in the playoffs last year, but again, other than that, they don't really have any real history. So it
Yeah.
was kind of a weird mixed bag in my opinion. But overall, I thought a decent chunk of the matchups were fine. I like
Yeah.
Grizzlies, Warriors,
Same.
Lakers, Celtics, of course. Nuggets, Sixers was pretty cool, but I don't know. I thought it was kind of a mixed bag. It just kind of depended on the matchup.
Yeah. It seemed like a lot of the narratives were, a little stretched out, but I enjoyed them. They were all pretty exciting games.
Mhm.
Knicks Nets was cool.
Yeah.
Nuggets Sixers
Mhm.
and Lakers Celtics were definitely my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
All
mean,
right.
it's a cool idea though, because like,
Yeah.
we got to bring something to the league,
I agree.
especially with the 82 game season that they have to go through.
Yeah,
We got to
I
have
think so.
something.
I think so. I'm all for like if I'm all for trying to find ways to make the product better and make it more entertaining.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, they've talked about adding the midseason tournament. I think that's kind of an interesting
That
idea.
would be cool.
We'll see how it goes. Obviously the play-in was a success. I know people had kind of some questions about it, but overall I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Um, but I always do like it when they kind of try new things, and I think they need to because
Yeah.
there definitely needs to be more meaning to the regular season. Because it's just there's times where it just feels like it doesn't really matter a whole lot.
Yeah, because look at what they did with the All Star game. I mean, they revitalized that thing by changing
Exactly.
up the structure. Like now everybody watches it. But
Exactly.
and also with the play-in tournament, it's kind of like the wild card in the NFL. So
Right.
I'm a fan of all innovative things to bring more viewership to the league. And
Exactly.
my only concern with the midseason tournament would be when would it be? Because you gotta you gotta play in March Madness too. So
Right.
and I don't know how that would work, but it would be cool to see though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Um, so we mentioned Miles Turner earlier a little bit, and so the other day he got a 2-year, $60 million extension. It was kind of
yeah,
interesting because the way it was reported initially made it seem like that he was getting like $30 million a year. Which that feels like a lot of money for Miles Turner, who I do think is a good player, but $30 million that puts him in the same tier of some of the superstar centers, and I'm not sure
right.
he's quite in that caliber.
Mm-mm.
But then when you actually look at it, once Shams put out the other details, it's actually interesting. So he makes 30 million actually this season, which I didn't even know you could do. So Indiana has, is a team that has cap space this season, because they
Right.
don't have a lot of big contracts. And so what they did was they gave him an additional 17 million on top of what he's making right now to basically put him, in that 30+ million dollar range. And then for the next 2 years, he gets like 19, 20 million a year, which I think is actually a really team friendly deal now that they once they started talking about it. And I do like this because I think Indiana, they had injuries to Tyrese Halliburton, but they've surprised a lot of people and they've been a lot better than expected. A lot of
Yeah,
people thought they would kind of be a bottom feeder team, but they've actually been pretty good. And I like this deal for Indiana and for
yeah,
Turner.
same. Um, I saw one report that said he could still be traded. I think that's total BS, but
Yeah, I don't think he can be. I think
yeah,
usually when you sign an extension, you can't be
right.
for a year, I think, but I
Okay.
could be wrong. It may just
Yeah,
depend on the type of contract. Because like LeBron, he signed his extension. He can't be traded this season.
right.
And I know Malcolm Brogdon, I think last year he signed an extension and he couldn't be traded until the off season.
Yeah, smart move by Indiana though,
I
because
agree.
he's pretty much essential to that team in my opinion. And it's a
Yeah.
good business move too, so get to
Yeah,
keep him.
exactly. The Indiana Sacramento trade, it feels like it ended up kind of working out for both teams. I think it kind of felt like a really one-sided deal initially, but
Hmm.
Halliburton's coming into his own as basically like an all-star caliber player.
Yep.
Of course, you got guys like Benedict Mathurin. Miles Turner has kind of been unlocked. Not having to play next to Sabonis, and then of course, the Kings. They're one of the top teams record-wise in the West right now. Sabonis being there has kind of unlocked De'Aaron Fox, who I really like, and I thought could be a lot better than he had been like the last season or so,
Yeah.
and he's been great. So it's a trade that I think, long term is a lot better than what people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, same. Sorry to
Yeah.
branch off a little bit, but
Mhm.
this just popped into my mind because like
Mhm.
we don't like people don't really talk about the King. So like
Right.
do you think it's like just a regular season like smoke and mirrors sham or something, or do you think they could actually make a playoff run? I don't believe
So
in them. I'm not gonna lie.
you said you don't believe in them?
No, I don't believe in them.
Yeah, I think in the regular season, I think they're a really good offensive team.
Yeah.
I just think in the playoffs, I think defensively it's not going to work. But, for the Kings, they could be one of those teams at the deadline that could make one of those kind of holy moly type of moves that just come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But if the team as currently constructed, I don't think is going to go too far. But
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's like what Sacramento necessarily wants to do. I think they primarily just want to make the playoffs, and see what they can do because they hadn't been in the playoffs for like what 15 years. I think it's the
Yeah.
longest streak of professional sports. So I mean, like exactly. So after that
Yeah.
many years of basically just failure after failure after failure, I think they'd be okay with, hey, if we go out in the first round, it may be kind of embarrassing to some, but for us, we kind of look at that as a step forward.
Yeah.
But
Shout out
yeah,
to the Kings, man, but I don't believe in you.
yeah, same, honestly. So to wrap up, we got a couple of rumors. These two rumors are kind of weird in the sense that they don't really follow like a ton of logic in the sense of it almost was worded in a way of, these two players, could be, teams are calling about them, but we don't, but they may not necessarily be moved. So it mentioned one of them was Chris Paul for Phoenix. Obviously, Phoenix has kind of had a really weird season with all those injuries.
Yeah.
To everybody. They're like ninth in the Western Conference. This one is kind of weird. I mean, this feels like a scenario where like if Phoenix was to just blow it up, but I don't know. Before the injuries, they were a pretty good team. I don't know if I would necessarily trade Chris Paul just yet. Maybe in the offseason if it doesn't work out, but
Right.
I don't necessarily think it makes a whole lot of sense to do now. And I also don't even know what you would get back for him at this point. I mean, he makes, you know, 37, 40 million or whatever, but either way, like I don't know. This one feels kind of smoke and mirrors to me. I don't really buy this one. I don't know. What about you?
I mean, like, I like Chris Paul a lot, but we have to face the facts. He's getting old.
That
Is
is
this
true.
is he's I'm not gonna say washed, but he's just getting old.
Right.
Um, but I don't see the Suns moving him just because his locker room presence. Like,
Right.
I know
Yeah.
those guys look up to him and respect him a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't see a move. I don't see them moving him. And
Right.
honestly, his trade value is so low, anyways.
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
where would he go, and what would you give up for him?
Yeah.
That's my
It's a
question.
it's a weird scenario just because, like you said, he is an older player, 36, 37 years old. And, a lot of the other guys on Phoenix, like Booker, Bridges, Aiton, all those guys are so young.
Yeah.
So it does feel like maybe an off-season move, but I don't think it's something that they would consider right now. I think right now
No,
they're kind of focused on getting healthy. I know Fred Van Vliet is a name that was kind of mentioned, but again, if I'm Toronto, I mean,
you
you're
don't get
trading Fred
anything
Van
from
Vliet
that.
for Chris Paul. I mean, that
No.
just seems kind of weird unless you're getting back like a pick from Phoenix or something. I don't know. That seems kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
Van Vliet is young or younger-ish, I guess. But also he's also going to be up for a new contract, and he's going to be making a ton of money. I don't know. This one doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
yeah, some of these rumors are like, it seems like people are fishing for content because there's not a lot of real rumors out with a lot of
Right.
substance. But it's
Exactly.
it's cool to talk about, but not. I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think they're gonna move
Right.
him at the deadline at all. No shot.
Yeah. And then a player kind of in a similar situation, Kyle Lowry, for the Miami Heat. Obviously he's another guy that's kind of getting older. Miami has said that they're not really interested in trading him, but other teams have called. We kind of talked about it in a previous podcast about, maybe like a sleeper D'Angelo Russell team,
Yeah.
in Miami, but
Hmm.
I don't know. This one is kind of weird. Obviously, Miami is not as good as they were last season. They are even though they have guys like Bam, and the Martin and Caleb Martin. Like at the same time, there's also some other guys that are older, Lowry, Butler. I mean, I don't know. This is another situation where I'm not. I wouldn't if Miami got a decent offer for Lowry, I could see this one more so than Chris Paul. But at the
Hmm.
same time, again, I don't know what team is really vying to try to get Kyle Lowry because
Right.
again, he's 36, he's on a big contract. He hasn't really been amazing, so I don't really think that this makes a whole lot of sense unless you're a team that just feels like maybe we need a veteran point guard. Like if you're Minnesota, maybe you're like, let's just swap Kyle Lowry for D'Angelo Russell and just see where this goes. But I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Minnesota's been playing a little better. D'Angelo Russell's been a lot better. He's been pretty good as of late. Kind of him and Anthony Edwards kind of carrying the team while Towns has been out. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't think they're gonna move him either. Pretty much a parallel situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Like I said, parallel situation. They're both getting older. Significant drop off in their games. But I mean, with all the money he's making, I don't see them moving him.
Right.
Like, who's gonna take him? That would be my question.
Exactly.
And I'm more concerned about who's calling. Like,
Yeah.
I understand if you want to get him for the name, whatever, but skill set wise, in his age right now, I don't,
Right.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't accept any calls on him either. Just let
Exactly.
it ride
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. He's older. He's become
Yeah.
a lot more injury prone now. I just think
Yep.
that would be a really dangerous signing.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of similar to like a Mike Conley situation where again, I think in the right situation maybe he helps, but I'm not necessarily like vying to trade for him because I just have concerns about, a small guard that's older that's injury prone.
And like a lot of the like good teams already have the point guard spot filled. So
Exactly.
I mean, what does he really add? And I don't think any of the bad teams are looking for a, you know, older Kyle Lowry, maybe a younger one, but not an older
Right.
one. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. All right, so that's it for today's episodes of All Ball Takes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Again, we are planning to do a stream. I believe it will be on Discord for the trade deadline, basically like
Yeah.
live reactions, discussions. You can come and hang out and have a good
Yeah.
time with us. Uh, Thanks for listening. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you on Friday.
Yep.